Hi, my name is Amber. Welcome back to my channel, Books and Beaches. So it is time to talk about all of the books that I read in the month of October. And October was actually a really good reading month. And of course, I can't remember what the exact number was, but I've got my computer, go figure. Let me just see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Okay, 9 books. And I mean, 9 books for like this year of my reading is a really good number. But what made it even better is so many of these books were really highly rated. There may have only been actually like one complete 5-star, but overall, it was a really good reading month. You know, I got myself all in the spooky feels, I guess, and, you know, just really leaned into books that I knew or thought I would know I would like, and even my book club books I knew I would like. So let's get started. I am just going to share them in the order that I read them because for me that makes the most sense, and I never plan far enough ahead to actually put them in any other order. But here we go. Okay, so the first book that I picked up, and I actually should say, most of these were either audio, digital, ebooks, and I think there was only one that was physical. So there's that. I'm gonna have a lot of images in here. But the first one being, and that was We Are All Guilty Here by Karen Slaughter. This is going to be the first book in a new series she's writing, and now I just want to grab the name of that series, North Falls Thrillers. So this one, God, it takes you on a ride. And I mean, granted, a lot of mysteries and thrillers do. Were we getting different perspectives? No, I can't remember, but I know we start off with a member of the police force, and she is looking into these 2 teenage girls that have gone missing. And and it starts on the 4th of July. And so, you know, a lot of chaos going on that day. And one of the girls that goes missing is her best friend's stepdaughter. So she has like this personal connection of trying to find these girls. And we know there is probably some sort of, you know, foul play involved, probably a gunshot with the amount of blood and things that they have found. They found their missing bikes, but with fireworks, you know, most people probably wouldn't recognize that. And so, you know, we're trying to figure out, you know, what's going to happen. Her father is, forget if he's actually like sheriff or like a head of the police department. I don't remember which term they use, but you know, what are they going to do? This is a case that she wants to solve, and, you know, what happens? And we then move throughout the story, I forget how many years later, I think it's at least 10, and, you know, now her son is part of the police department, and there's all of these things going on, and you are continually trying to get to the bottom of what happened to these girls, you know, who was put in prison, etc. And it took so many different turns, and there were shocking parts. There's so much in here that I don't want to give away, and so I'm trying to be slightly intentionally vague, but I'm really looking forward to this being a new series. Now, I have read Karen Slaughter before. I mean, Pretty Girls is one of my favorites, but I don't think I've read any of her series, and so this is definitely one I could see myself, you know, getting hooked in. So I gave that one 4.5 stars, I believe. Really liked it. I mean, was it perfect? No, there were a couple things that I would have liked to have seen differently, but I don't want to say anything too much about those because I think I would spoil some stuff, and I don't want to do that for you. So there's that one. After that, I picked up an audiobook that I was very, very excited to pick up. This was an audiobook I received from Libro FM as being part of their educator advanced listening program, and this was Tuck Everlasting. I absolutely love Tuck Everlasting. I can remember the first time I read it, I was in 6th grade, and that was a book that I think like all 6th graders at my middle school read, and I loved it then. I loved the movie. The movie either came out when I was in middle school or maybe high school, so remember that. But this audiobook is special because it is narrated by Alexis Bledel, who most people know from Gilmore Girls, but she actually starred as Winnie Foster in the movie of Tuck Everlasting. And so I was really, really excited to see this as one of the choices for an advanced listening copy. And it was just like super nostalgic to listen to. And I mean, if you're a Gilmore Girls fan, you'd probably like listening to her. If you watch that movie, you'd like listening to her. If you like Tuck Everlasting, yeah, it was a great listen. If you've never read Tuck Everlasting before, we basically have Winnie Foster, who grows up in this like very, not secluded, but her family keeps her, very closed in, always kind of behind a fence, very prim, proper. And she goes exploring and she meets this woman, and she sees this woman drinking from the stream as she's exploring the woods. And this woman takes her back to her home. And, she meets up with her family, and she's learning, that this family is slightly different, and it all happens, from this stream, and, basically the idea of everlasting life. And yeah, so I am sure most people are probably pretty familiar with Tuck Everlasting, and there is a quote, and I just want to make sure I'm getting it correct, that I remember, and it is the quote that I think of every time I think of this book, and it's, "Don't be afraid of death, be afraid of an unlived life. You don't have to live forever, you just have to live." And I just love that quote. I think that it's what makes me think of this book. But if you have not read Tuck Everlasting, I highly recommend it. But like I said, the audiobook is fantastic as well. All right, after that, I picked up my what would have been October book club book, and that was Look Closer by David Ellis. I had never read anything by David Ellis before, but I'm very, very intrigued to read more because of how much I enjoyed this book. And this book was one that there are so many different twists and turns and parts and things that are connecting that I would have never guessed. Clearly, I am not going to give them away to you, but it was a wild ride. I know I said that already, but we have this couple, and they're not a unique couple by any means, but they both have their own things, and it's all based in Chicago, and that was part of the fun too, because I could picture some of that. And he is a law professor, I'm just kind of making sure, and she advocates for domestic violence victims. So I wanted to make sure I got those details correct. But we're questioning, whether or not one of them is going to be a killer. Then there is a woman who is a socialite who is found dead. It's kind of graphic. I don't know if this book necessarily has trigger warnings, but there are some things. And they are all trying to figure out how this woman died. And like I said, there are a lot of connections in this book. There are a lot of different players in this book, and you're trying to figure out, where it is all going. So I don't want to say too much more, but I was surprised this was a book. I think we heard about this book, and now I'm remembering this because I think Lindsay talked about it in her wrap up, because this is the book club I'm in with Lindsay at Lindsay's Little Library, that I believe when we saw Hannah Morrissey speak, I think she mentioned liking this book. And I think that's how we ended up choosing it, but highly recommend. I cannot wait to check out more things by David Ellis. If you have read anything else by David Ellis and you have a recommendation, feel free to let me know. But really enjoyed that one. Gave it 5 stars. I loved the ride that one took us on. After that, I picked up an audiobook that I had an ARC of from NetGalley, and it was about time I got to it. I'm really trying to get to those. And this was The Poppy Fields by Nikki Erlich. Now, I believe this is the second book that Nikki Erlich has written, because I think The Measure was her debut. Yes, just confirming that. Ooh, I also see they have a special edition copy of The Measure. But The Poppy Fields, was portrayed as being this book of people can go to these poppy fields to sleep for a matter of a couple months, to basically get over their grief. And it's this new scientific idea, experiment, process that works for almost everyone. And you find out it doesn't always work for every single person, and they talk about that. But what this book kind of turns into is a group of people who, I think it's a tornado goes through the airport that they're all flying out of. They can't fly out anymore because there's so much damage. And so they decide to road trip because they find out, I think 3 or 4 of them are heading to these poppy fields. And so we go along with them on this journey of getting there, because we don't get to the actual poppy fields until the last 4th of the book, I want to say. So I liked it. I I enjoyed getting to know the characters. Each character was very diverse and they had diverse reasons of why they were going to the poppy fields. And it was interesting to see how they all were connected in that. I think, and I want to say I heard Lena at Lena's Bookshelf talk about this, that the book was portrayed as something a little bit different. And I think when you read the description, it felt like maybe you were going to find out more about the poppy fields themselves and people that had experienced those poppy fields versus, you know, the journey to get there. But overall, I really enjoyed it. And I want to say I might have even rated this one higher than I rated The Measure, because I gave this one a 4.5. So I enjoyed listening to it. And I think that was part of the reason I enjoyed it so much. I may have not enjoyed it if I was just straight reading it. More so, I think, because we had different narrators. But yeah, for me, it was good. And like I said, I think I enjoyed it more than The Measure. So there was that one. After that, I picked up Frida McFadden's newest book. And I know this year I have read a lot of 2025 releases. When I go back and look at my stats for the year, I am sure I'm going to find that 2025 releases are, you know, heavily influencing my year. But that's all right. I mean, at least I'm reading. And I can always focus on backlist, bookshelf at any time. But I knew I needed to pick up the new Frida, and I don't know, I just get so excited because I know it's going to be like an easy, as everyone says, popcorn thriller. But if I haven't told you already, that was The Intruder. And I liked this one because it was very atmospheric for, you know, reading in October and the time that we're in, because other than the fact that I think it happens, just kidding, it happened in a rainstorm. For some reason I was thinking snowstorm, but it wasn't. And we have this woman who is very isolated in this cabin in the woods. I think her closest neighbor is, I don't know, maybe half a mile away through the woods. And, you know, they're batting down the hatches basically for a storm that's coming in. And it's going to be a big storm. At the beginning, we actually see her arguing with her landlord, like, hey, I know I need a new roof. I need some things to make sure I'm secure. And he's like, I don't want to do that. And she does have this close neighbor that comes over and is like, oh, you know, I'd be willing to do that for you. But she's not sure exactly how much she can trust him. She kind of feels like she sees someone outside as she's closing up for this storm. And eventually we get led to her having to go outside because she feels like she hears something, and she finds a girl covered in blood in her shed. And she brings this girl into her cabin, and things go from there. So you're not sure who you should trust. Should you trust this girl? Can you trust our main character? Can you trust the neighbor? Can you trust the landlord? It was one of those stories where you're trying to figure out, you know, basically who should you trust. And so I gave it a 4. Is it my favorite Frida? No, but any Frida for me is going to be enjoyable. I feel like she does, you know, those quick, easy thrillers well. So it was a 4 for me. After that, I seem to be on a Geneva Rose, think about it back here, kick this year. And I am trying to read her to 0. I don't know if I actually have any left. No, I do. I know I at least have one left. But I read It's a Date Again by Geneva Rose. And I think this one I just needed, I was half reading it on my Kindle, half listening to it. And I needed something on a car ride that I could listen to and just know, I don't want to call it fluff, but it, you know, it was just something easy to listen to. And so in this one, we have a woman at the very beginning of the book is like, yes, this is the man I love. I'm going to go find him. She's on the phone with her best friend and she gets hit by a car. I shouldn't laugh. It's not funny, but she wakes up in the hospital, I want to say at least a day or two later, and has no recollection of basically her entire life. And so, you know, her best friend is sitting, you know, next to her in her hospital bed. She doesn't know who she is. She doesn't know who her guy best friend is. And as they're trying to piece everything together, because she does not know who she is, 3 men come to visit her at the hospital, all claiming to have dated her. And she basically gets to start from scratch and try to figure out which one of these 3 guys was the one that she said, yes, this is the guy I want to be with. And so we go through her adventure of, you know, starting to date these guys again. And, you know, there's tension from her friends, and she's figuring out, you know, who other people are in her life, you know, what happened to her parents and all these things. So there were definitely touching parts. I thought it was very predictable though. And I won't say anything more than that, but I think it was just kind of written to be predictable. So, but overall it was enjoyable. I'm trying to think, what did I give this one? 3.5. So Not a bad rating by any means, but nothing that I'm like, oh yeah, go read this. Now, do I think it was an easy read? And if you need something easy, go for it. But nothing that I'd be like, you need to rush out and pick this one up now. So there's that. After that, I was just craving another thriller. And I was like, okay, who have I read in my past that I really like their books? And I thought of Alice Feeney. And I know I still have a couple of Alice Feeney's that I need to read before I have read her to zero. So I picked up Sometimes I Lie. And this one I was reading, was I reading on my Kindle? A little bit of Kindle, a little bit of audio. That's kind of how October just kind of went in general. Ironically, the main character in this one is Amber. And she also has, an accident of sorts. And she wakes up in the hospital in a coma where she can hear, and was she even seeing things? Oh, she can't move, she can't speak, she can't open her eyes, but she can hear everybody around her. And so she is trying to piece together, kind of what went on, what happened to her, because she doesn't actually remember the accident part, but she does remember, things about her life. And so we're trying to figure out what's going on. And so we are kind of jumping back and forth in between her memories of, figuring out what went on at different points here, and then her listening to these people constantly, coming into her hospital room. And yeah, and I think even then she's trying to figure out, who can she trust? Did her husband do it? We get her sister's perspective in there. They have a very interesting relationship. So we're trying to figure out that. And so, what put her in the hospital? What put her in this coma? And then all these back pieces that we get. So, and I do like it. It says, my name is Amber Reynolds. There are 3 things you should know about me. I'm in a coma. My husband doesn't love me anymore. And sometimes I lie. So, and you're kind of left wondering, where is that all going to come together? So I enjoyed that one. Gave it a 4.25 because Fable lets you do 4.25. One of these days I'm going to get my Fable video done, but I liked it. Not my favorite Alice Feeney. I mean, I think that one is still going to go, her books are in here somewhere. Probably will still go to Daisy Darker because I really liked that one, but there's that. Then after that, my one actual physical copy that I have here. And this is a book that I think I got gifted in one of the book exchanges that I did, in one of the groups I'm in. And that is After We Burned, and this is by Marieke Nienkamp. And I always have to tell myself that I'm trying to say that one right. She has written some of my favorite YA books that I've ever read, including, let me get the name right, because it's similar to something else I've read. This Is Where It Ends, which was a school shooting book that is so hard-hitting. But this is her newest release. I believe it came out at the beginning of this year. Let me just double check. Yep. Oh, and actually, I could tell you who gifted it to me. It was gifted to me by Melissa J. French, I believe, from that gifting group, which is really cool. But in this book, we have a group of students, and we know that one student has died, and it all stems from something that went on at their high school. And their high school had this big fire, and they are trying to figure out who knows more, how did the fire start, what happened, why was the student in the school to begin with. And I do believe, her life was tragically ended after trying to escape the fire. And so they are trying to piece together what's going on. So we have perspectives from some of her friends. She was kind of a more, quiet person, but she had, these different friend groups that she had different connections with. And so we're trying to figure out what exactly went on. And so if I can remember correctly, we go through a couple different characters and how they're all connected. There is a teacher involved in this book with very, very questionable and very wrong choices. And how is this all going to come together? So I absolutely love this copy. It's got the burned edges, which is really neat. And I feel like Marieke Nienkamp knows how to write, a hard-hitting, lots of, I don't want to say questionable topics, but difficult topics to deal with, especially in more middle school, high school age. Obviously this one, fire, student death, things like that. She wrote a school shooting book. She's wrote a lot of other books. I'm trying to think. I want to say one of hers was even during a whole shutdown thing. So anyways, she knows how to write a hard-hitting book. and this one was great. So there's that one. And actually it would help if I told you what I rated it. I gave them a 4. Really good, just solid YA mystery, you know, trying to piece everything together. So, and then last but certainly not least, a very strange and different book to end my month with, but I always like to participate in the Kindle challenges, and I think the Kindle challenge that like released within the month of October was something colorful, and they wanted you to read a graphic novel. And so I just wanted to pick something easy that I could kind of, you know, read as I was going, and that was Big Nate, Pray for a Fire Drill. I love the Big Nate books. I think they're really fun for middle grade students / YA students. I had a bunch of copies of them in my classroom. And so this one, you know, is no different. It's just a fun graphic novel about our main character, Nate. He's very funny. He likes to draw comics himself. And I feel like I never know how exactly our author, which is Lincoln Pierce, like decides on his titles, because the fire drill part was a very small part of this book. And you know, it's quick, it's a graphic novel, but I just like the Big Nate series. They're just super fun. And so I gave it a 3.75. You know, I'm not a huge graphic novel reader by any means, but I think they're fun for kids. And so that was just a fun way to like check that one off on my Kindle challenge. So those were all the books that I read in the month of October. I have already started off with a great month of November, because we're a little ways in already, but I have some more content coming that talk about some of the plans that I have for November, or things that I'm working on and projects that I'm working on. But let me know what you read in the month of October, anything that was amazing and that I should add to my list. Feel free to let me know in the comments below. If you are, you know, not feeling like sharing any of that, but you still want to interact with my channel, because I so greatly appreciate it, feel free to leave, let's go with a flame emoji for the after we burn. So I know there's this flame emoji in there, so feel free to include that in the comments. But as always, if you like this video, feel free to like and subscribe, and I will see you next time.